G'day. Have you ever made something that nobody wanted? Well, I did. This coffee table back in 2018. Looking back, I don't blame them. It's glass, it's too big, and it's way too sharp. Which has suddenly become a bit of a problem because I'm about to have a baby. So it's time for a new family-friendly coffee table, but it's not going to end up the way I expected. Let's begin. This project's a bit of a journey of discovery. I don't have a 3D model, drawings, or even a sketch. Because this one isn't starting with an idea, it's starting with this slab. And I'm trying very hard not to get in its way. I reckon every piece of timber has a point where you can either work with it or against it. So before I make a single cut, I'm going to spend a little time just looking at it. Try and figure out what this slab is trying to tell me. What does it want to be? And the answer I reckon is right here. Running through the middle is this incredible swirl of grain. It kind of looks like a glacier. It's clearly the focal point, and if I leave the live edges on, I reckon they're just going to compete. So I'm cutting them off. Now you might be wondering, hey, where'd you even get that slab from? Well, I'll let you in on a little secret. The best slabs are the ones nobody else wants, and they're cheaper too. This one was leaning against the wall at JPM Hardwoods in Sydney's inner west. It's $100 for the slab and $50 to dress it flat. Sold. After working around the knots and the borer holes and the live edge, I was left with this little kink on both sides. It wasn't planned, but I actually quite like it. It just needed a little bit of refinement, so I'm softening the angle ever so slightly. One thing I hated about the last table were the straight 90-degree ends. It just felt so rigid, and I was always banging my knee against it getting to the couch. So I'm sketching out a rough shape that should allow better movement around the table. Sometimes I find designing like this can be quite tricky. I'll have one idea and then change my mind and back and forth until eventually even the camera got bored and tried to make a run for it. What? Most of the time I like to freehand wherever I can. It can, however, lead to things looking a bit too organic. And what I'm aiming for with this piece is for it to feel calm and intentional. I want the edges to almost disappear so your eye naturally goes to that grain. An effective way to do this is to bring in a little bit of geometry. Luckily, most workshops are full of circles. In mine, I've got a roll of duct tape and the lid of a homebrew barrel, and they were about the size I needed. Both are approved radius from the Safe Furniture, Safe Baby handbook of 1998. Hey, let me ask you a question. Have you ever done something in your day-to-day that you immediately wish you hadn't and thought, oh, no worries, I'll just hit Control-Z. But then suddenly you realise you're in real life and standing in the kitchen staring at a bowl of cereal on the floor, wondering why you thought there'd be a keyboard nearby? You're not alone. Luckily, in woodworking, there's a pretty simple solution to stop this from happening. MDF, templates. But that won't stop you dropping your cereal. Making a template of the slab will let me play with the shape and tweak the radius and change my mind without turning that slab into some expensive bit of firewood. Yeah, sure, I could have done this earlier, but I had conviction in my ideas back then, and now I kind of just want an insurance policy. A Control-Z. Also, the sander is really heavy, and it's much easier to use the router with a pattern bit to cut that final shape. Working on a project like this and figuring it out as you go probably isn't for everyone. It's a lot of thinking and reflection. I'll walk past and stop, look again, maybe flip it around and convince myself I liked it better 5 minutes ago. Today, all I've really managed to do is cut a shape out of a slab. Whether that's progress or not, I'll let you be the judge. Let me know in the comments. Before I even got the slab, I took a gander at my timber stash. I hadn't seen this in about 6 months, and I just wanted to see what I was working with. Most of it is salvaged for free from one place or another, but the ones I had my eye on were these old hardwood beams. From the day I brought them home, I was convinced they were destined to become table legs. I'd always imagined they'd lie on their side with some striking shape sitting on top. And the height definitely supported that theory. But something just wasn't sitting right. The proportions felt off. The size and shape of the slab weren't marrying up with the picture I had in my head. So I did what I normally do. Spent half a day moving bits of wood around and staring at them. You know, watching this back, I realised I'd fallen into exactly the trap I was trying to avoid. I'd become attached to my first idea. I was so focused on laying the legs sideways that I'd stopped paying attention to the timber itself. The grain wanted to run vertically and the blocks wanted to be smaller. Once I accepted that, everything else became surprisingly obvious. There was really only one arrangement that I liked. One leg follows the slab while the other anchors it from the end. I reckon it gives the table a more modern feel and makes it read as a single object, rather than just a slab with a couple of legs. One thing I really liked about these blocks was their rough industrial character. But you know what character means? It's as square as a book in water. And the problem is, cutting a tenon into something that isn't square is awkward. So instead, I'm using a template to route a perfectly square tenon. That worked really well. Now, what happens next is a little elaborate. Did it need to happen this way? Probably not, but it made sense at the time. So here I'm making a template out of the first template. Now I'm using that template to make the master template. And finally, I can use the master template on the slab to cut the mortise. Since the slab is spotted gum, it's really dense, so I'm using the big router to hog out most of the waste while creeping up on the edge, and then I'll use that trim router to finish the job. I've actually never cut mortise and tenons with a template like this before, but it's clearly an efficient way to go. The tenons, still need a bit of work on the corners to fit, but that's a job for another day. Right now, I just want to see what these things look like under all that garbage. You know, a lot of this project has been guided more by feeling and intuition, but let's not confuse that with vibes. It's still woodworking, not a wellness podcast. The funny thing about designing this way is that the build tends to jump around a bit. One decision unlocks the next. It's an evolution. Now that I've settled on the overall shape and the legs, I can finally start thinking about those smaller details and how they relate to each other. The one thing I was absolutely certain about were these straight bow ties. Firstly, they're going to help stop the crack from opening any further, but just as importantly, they'll give your eye somewhere to rest against all that wild grain. Like I said, it might seem a little backwards, but next I'll start to remove all the bark and rot in the cracks and get it ready for the next step. You know, the resin. Nah, just kidding. Like everything else in modern life is plastic. Like the couch, the curtains, the TV. I'm pretty sure the air's becoming plastic. Anyway, I'm going to draw the line at the wooden coffee table, because wood is family friendly. Besides, I reckon the crack is far more interesting left exposed. Think of it like a live edge. Come to think of it, my hallway table has a similar anti-resin internal live edge thing going on. If you haven't seen it, check it out here. It wasn't until I dry fit the legs that I could finally just take a step back.
Holy cow.
And work out, how do I want to treat the edge of the tabletop? It seems like a small detail, but it's one that completely changed the direction of the project. Normally I just break the edge with a tiny round over to keep everything feeling, crisp. But this slab was different. I've got all these borer holes and tear out to deal with, so I thought, I'm going to try something new. A much larger round over. My hope was that it would hide some of those imperfections and make the top feel a little less rigid. Okay, well that didn't work. If anything, it's just made the holes stand out even more. So while I worked on the top edge, I started thinking through my options. I could cut the damaged areas out and patch them. I could fill them with resin. We're not doing that. Or I could simply ignore it. Or I could use the opportunity to hide it with, some sort of carving and treat it like a feature. The more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea of little hands exploring the difference between smooth and textured carving. But I've got to be careful, carving can very quickly get away from you, and this just isn't some block of wood I can replace. It's one of a kind. So here I'm sketching out a rough map of where I want to carve. I'm using every borer hole, tear out and little imperfection as a starting point, and then letting the pattern grow from there. The grain and contours of the slab have some influence, but in reality I'm just letting my hand do the thinking. The idea is to create little pockets of texture that will catch your eye and make you want to reach out and touch them. I quickly realised these borer holes were way deeper than I thought. The more I kept carving, the more I was eroding that slab and losing that profiled edge. It definitely didn't have that light touch I was after, and I was beginning to regret everything. I've come too far, and I figured the only way up is down, so let's go for it. Rather than trying to hide what I had done, I'm going to follow it and make it more of a feature. Part of the design. Then I had another thought. Kids like to crawl under things, right? Well, why not continue the carving underneath and link up the pockets with little trails to follow? It could be this fun little detail that only the most curious kids will know about. Them and the rest of the internet, I guess. This front section still wasn't sitting right. It looked less like intentional carving and more like the gnawing of a huge rodent. I spent a while sketching over the top, trying different shapes just to see what made sense with the grain and the cavities and the butterfly ties. It's a big balancing act. The only idea that made sense were a couple of straight lines meeting to form a corner, and will in essence act as a starting point for the pattern to grow from. I ended up matching that straight line idea on the opposite corner, just to give the table a bit of balance without making it feel too symmetrical. With a set of plans, you know when you're done, but for this kind of thing it can just go on and on. You can always add another dot, a new line, a bit of texture, some more detail, but eventually you have to trust that you've done enough. So to lean on that ever reliable credo, less is more, I'm going to call it there and focus on getting this table together. Upon reflection, this isn't the coffee table I set out to make. Part of me still wonders what it'd look like a little bigger, maybe even stained black to match my other projects. But I guess that's the fun of designing while you build. You let the material have a say and you never really know where you'll end up. For now though, I think it'll do just fine. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it while I still can. Thanks for watching.